Nobody really says this out loud, but if you look closely at history, many of the people who were criticized the most, the ones who couldn't sit still, who struggled to follow instructions, who never gave a simple, straight answer, those are often the same people who ended up changing everything. And here's the part that makes it even more fascinating. Modern science actually has a term for how their minds worked. There's a kind of thinking that helped create the light bulb, inspired breakthroughs like the theory of relativity, and quietly shaped the way human civilization evolved. But from the outside, it doesn't look like genius at all. It looks like restlessness. It looks like distraction. It looks like someone drifting off mid-conversation or answering a question with three new ones. That way of thinking is called divergent thinking. And today, we're going to explore 10 signs that your brain might naturally work this way, and what that really means for how you experience the world around you. Sign 1. You rarely settle on just one answer. When most people are asked a question, they aim for a single, clear solution. But your mind doesn't stop there. It branches. One idea turns into 5, and each of those turns into 5 more. That's not confusion, it's expansion. In cognitive psychology, divergent thinking is defined as the ability to generate multiple unique solutions from one starting point. It's not a flaw, it's a different operating system. Sign 2. Unusual connections feel completely natural to you. You hear something in biology and instantly connect it to music, architecture, or even economics. To you, it just makes sense. This ability, called cross-domain thinking, is a hallmark of creative cognition. Psychologist Sarnath Mednick described it as the ability to form remote associations, linking ideas that seem unrelated on the surface. It's not that others can't do it, it's that your brain simply filters less and connects more. Sign 3. Your questions sometimes make people uncomfortable. Not because you're trying to challenge anyone, but because curiosity pulls you there. You ask, why is it done this way? Or what if we approach this completely differently? To you, it feels normal. To others, it can feel disruptive. That's because divergent thinking doesn't just question answers, it questions the framework itself. Sign 4. Your best ideas show up at the most inconvenient times. In the shower, late at night, in the middle of an unrelated conversation. This isn't random. It's tied to the brain's default mode network, a system that becomes active during rest and mind wandering. When you're not forcing focus, your brain starts connecting dots in the background. That's often where insight lives.
Sign 5. You think in images, metaphors, and stories. While some people rely on straight linear logic, your mind leans toward analogy. You explain one idea through another. This isn't less precise, it's just built differently. In fact, many major breakthroughs began as metaphors before they became equations. If some of this feels familiar, not just as an idea, but as something you've actually lived, hold on to that, because the next few signs go even deeper. Sign 6, you get bored faster than most people. Not just ordinary boredom, but a kind of mental itch when things become repetitive or predictable. This is often linked to how your brain processes dopamine. You may need more novelty, more variation, more stimulation to stay engaged. It's not laziness, it's wiring. Sign 7, unfinished ideas bother you more than they should. For many people, an idea can come and go without much thought. But for you, an unexplored idea feels like something left incomplete, almost like a quiet loss. That's because your brain doesn't just see ideas as thoughts, it sees them as possibilities that could become real. Sign 8, you're unusually comfortable with uncertainty. Where others feel pressure to resolve ambiguity quickly, you can sit with it. Open-ended questions don't frustrate you, they intrigue you. Psychologists call this tolerance for ambiguity, and it's one of the core traits behind creative thinking. You don't rush to close the loop, you explore it. Sign 9, you've probably been labeled as unfocused or scattered. This one matters, not because it defines you, but because it reflects the system around you. Most schools and workplaces are built for convergent thinking. One right answer, one efficient path. If your mind doesn't follow that pattern, it can be misunderstood. But that mismatch isn't a personal flaw, it's structural. Sign 10, you're drawn to complex, open-ended problems. The kind with no clear answer, no obvious path. Where others feel overwhelmed, you feel curious, even energized. Not because you already know the solution, but because the uncertainty gives you room to explore, room to think sideways. That's why people with this kind of thinking often find themselves in fields like art, science, entrepreneurship, or philosophy, spaces where questions matter just as much as answers. Here's what most people misunderstand about divergent thinking. It's not a personality label. It's not some rare gift you either have or don't. It's a cognitive style, a pattern in how your brain approaches the unknown. And like any pattern, it comes with strengths and challenges. Psychologist J.P. Guilford, who first studied divergent thinking in depth, made something very clear. This way of thinking is separate from traditional intelligence. You don't need a high IQ score to think creatively, because divergent thinking isn't about how much you know, it's about how many directions you can go with what you know. So if parts of this felt familiar, the restlessness, the constant connections, the resistance to simple answers, that's worth paying attention to. Not as a label to box yourself into, but as a way to better understand how your mind actually works. Because once you understand that, you stop fighting your nature and start learning how to use it.